So yeah, it's definitely that sort of thing. So
I said, no, you'll enjoy our subject, but I didn't pick it because of you.
well, it's. I mean, the bottom line is very simple: is that people are going to feel it if it's resonant for them, and most people when they have some resonance to it. But some people will be more like, "Oh, this is me," and then some people go, "No, I'm avoiding that." So ultimately, it's for everybody.
So, yes.
Yes. Here we go.
Here we go. So this is Christine and Barry. Let's talk about dating on goingsolomedia.com. And today we're going to talk about how to heal from a hard breakup.
Oh, this is going to be deep.
How do you have anything surface about that?
Well, the thing is also a lot of people, I mean, it's funny, I just was editing a video clip and I put up on Instagram about what to do. So I didn't realize, it's funny, I was just doing some editing of a video clip because I'm now learning how to do the Instagram stuff. So I take like little 1-2 minute clips from my videos. And it was talking about this thing about how to heal from breakup. And I said, it's like, you got to do the work. Yeah. And so the first thing to say about this is that, for many people, the way people heal from past relationship hurts is to get into the next relationship. And that's a no-no. No. in my book.
Me too.
Because it's like, you want to basically cover up, you use your next relationship as a Band-Aid to the other one. Like, how much do you not expect your partner to use them for that? It's like using somebody else to clean up your own mess.
Yes.
That's so messy.
Well, and I'm individual, so I think about a visual of you have a sore and you put a Band-Aid on it, and then you put another Band-Aid on it and another Band-Aid on it, and it's not going to heal. There's no way it's going to heal if you just keep piling Band-Aids on it.
Right. The way that Barbara DeAngelis said this, I remember in a lecture one that she did a long time ago, to lecture about this, saying about, and she's the one who did Making Love Work in LA many years ago. She was actually John Gray's first wife, I believe. So she's been in the work for a long time. And she talks about basically when you go through a breakup, what happens is it's almost like if you imagine having ice on top of the ocean, and basically, I'm not sure I said this before, I said it somewhere recently in another room, maybe it was in Clubhouse, I said, I can't remember. Was basically saying is like when you go through a breakup, it's like you have like ice that protects you, like that formative shell that is the protection against the hurt. The problem is, though, is that if you don't deal with that shielding, the protection you got against the hurt, what you do is you go in another relationship, you've got a little bit less love to give because you've got more protection on it. And slowly that ice is covering up the whole ocean. So by the time you get to the 7th, 8th relationship, there's no more room for you to express love because you protected all of yourself. There's no room to get in or out. So when you melt the ice and you do the work, then you can love fully again, which is ideally you find someone you want to love. You want to be able to love them fully. So do the work.
Yes. Yes. And that's such a good point. And along the analogy of the covering up and the ice, what people will say is, well, I'm going to be extra careful. I'm going to be extra cautious. I'm going to be extra diligent. And I'm like, well, good, but not the way you're thinking about it. Because the way you're thinking about it is, as you said, it's just going to put up walls and blocks of ice. Because I said, whether it's a man or a woman that's had the bad breakup and making this unilateral decision, a really good person's going to take a look at that and go, how would I ever get through that?
Right.
I mean, they're going to come up against this wall, this block of ice, and people are like, oh, I want somebody to come and heal my wounds. No, it would be really good for you to heal your own, because nobody knows how to heal our own wounds like we do. We really have somewhere inside, we would need somebody maybe to coach us and give us some additional tools and bring the answers to the surface. But we really know deep down what the hurt is, so that we really know how to heal it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we can't be looking to the outside.
Well, it's funny because that analogy you said just dropped another picture in my mind. I think we got pictures all over the place today. It's funny.
I think so.
But basically you got that all the shelves and everything else. Then you say you're being extra cautious, be very careful and very selective. It's like you're never gonna have snipers on the top of the turrets, like Guardian guns. I'm like, imagine building up a fortress so powerful that you have guards on there. Who's gonna dare approach you?
Nobody. Even the most wonderful, fabulous, self-confident person is going to go,
bye.
too much. And then the other thing that happens is when we get really busy, it looks not so bad. So then my visual is, if you've ever kept fish, an aquarium or even a fishbowl, the water for a while can look pretty just fine. But if you go to clean it, like you vacuum out the water it stirs up all the fish poop and all the not
Mm-hmm.
eaten food, and the water turns into this big mess. But now you can clean it up because it was all sitting there, this residual at the bottom. And that's always what happens if we haven't dealt with the hurt. We haven't cleaned out the hurt. We haven't gone through all the steps and not gotten stuck in the step of, well, I must be a bad person. Isn't that where a lot of people go?
Well, that's the thing. People will look at, listen, say another way. It's like many people go through, no, say this, I find the right way of saying, because there's not saying many people. It's more like the people who are really, the nice people, or people who are really caring people, will tend to self-inflict anything that goes wrong rather than seeing maybe the other person's fault. Because if you're a nice person, you wouldn't put fault in somebody else. No, take it on personally. Yeah. Which is a trap, of course. And we'll break it down as we go through this. But the reality is, for most people, people who are oftentimes wounded actually will stay away from relationships because they're also under the belief that time heals all wounds. It's a great quote. But the reality is, time heals a lot of physical wounds. It doesn't heal a lot of emotional wounds, though. Mm-hmm. And that's the clarity we'll talk about.
Actively working on it. You have to actively work on it over the time.
Right.
Not just sitting there.
Right, because the time heals, it's like time heals all wounds, where it's like, yes, if you cut yourself, then yes, over time that will happen. The wound will heal itself because the body's got amazing repair cycles. But emotionally, those wounds don't heal with time. They require input, guidance, support, love, compassion, all these different things we're going to talk about.
Yes. Understanding.
Yes, all that.
Because that's the other thing that I hear from when you talked about nice people, because it was something that I did all the time. I treated them nicely. What's wrong that they didn't treat me the same way? What's wrong with me? Mm-hmm. What's wrong with me? And I discovered what I needed to do differently was to not expect everybody just because I was nice to them to be nice to me. I get to choose whether I'm nice to them or not, and then I wait. So you know how they in the courts it's you're innocent until proven guilty. That's sort of how we treat it. I put it out there and I go, let's see what happens. And then I just wait. So that way, I don't.
Sorry, my mind's got somewhere that I need to leave it alone. Sorry.
I would go there.
I was just thinking about like setting up like a trap in the jungle or something. It's like you're just sitting there and gotta wait. It's like, I'll wait for them. Anyway, sorry.
I knew you were thinking deviously, and it probably does sound that way when I put it that way. It's what's worked for me because I'm gracious about it. I'm understanding about it. I don't go ha ha. I don't give somebody a hard time back. I just go, oh, well, now I want to see what their true nature is back to me. And it's not that I go, oh, they did something bad and now they're gone, because that would be inappropriate and inaccurate. Because I might have to say, so tell me why you did it that way. What would work better for me is if you did it this way.
Right.
And then I see, well, how do they handle that? Because they get to say the same thing. Gosh, it would be better for me if you handled it this way. And then I could say, no, that doesn't work for me at all. Too bad. Or, yeah, I could switch that. That's not a big deal if that would make you feel more comfortable.
Right.
So that's one of the adjustments that people need to make. It's that whole, I love the saying of throw the baby out with the bathwater, because that's what people do in this situation.
Yeah.
I'm never going to date again. I'm never using apps again. I'm never giving my heart away again. I'm never ever, and it's always all or nothing after a really bad breakup.
Well, because what they're doing is they're taking that bad experience and painting everything with it. Really,
yes,
that's what's happening.
Yes,
and it's a false approach. And then I mean, it's the double-edged. There's two ways of ruining this. One is to paint everybody with the same brush, or to say, oh, that's a bad one. Let me go on the next one right away.
Yes.
Without doing the work, because as we're going to talk about again, the healing part of past relationship hurts is an internal process. You don't need anybody else. You don't need to date anybody else to fix. Yes, you work with a coach or something, but you need to do the work first, so you're free. As we've mentioned at the beginning about the different pictures we drew for you,
yes,
to illustrate how bad it is to not do the work. We will explain some of the things. So recognizing that using your relationship patterns, as in choosing somebody else or avoiding other people, isn't the solution either. They're means to an end, but not the solution. So definitely we're going to talk about how to do the right work. There was one thing that came up for me when you were saying that was also, we have a habit as human beings to color everything around a bad situation as part of that same situation.
Yes.
So we have a bad breakup, then because we met them through this app, we'll never go on the app again. Or, you know, it was a really bad breakup, so I'm never going to be seeing anybody who lives in this town anymore. I mean, it's like we do such strange things in their mind because we don't clarify what's going on is that one relationship. Yeah. And also the patterns, you know, that was the other thing that was coming up for me. Because you mentioned about one of your patterns. One of my patterns was that my way of avoiding the pain of breakup was to shut up. Or I should say shut down. So in past relationships, when she got upset, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't fight for it. I wouldn't explain my position. I would stutter out a possible response, or I just shut down completely because I didn't have the skills to be able to articulate in discomfort in that place. Yeah. And recognizing how much I lost out in relationships because they ended because I didn't fight for them or choose to change. I mean, I've become really good at talking about this stuff because I've messed up so much stuff.
Well, we are our first clients.
Yes, we are. So that recognition is like, oh yeah, that's another thing. So the thing about it is that when past relationship hurts often happen because we didn't end them cleanly. Yes. So part of the picture is not just the loss of the love that we lost, is the fact maybe we didn't do the way we thought of, and we're judging ourselves because we thought we could have done it better or differently, or whatever it was that we didn't do, and so we blame ourselves for that. So not healthy. Which
then is going to undermine our self-confidence and often lead us to date not the right person for that additional reason.
And that's actually going to be a slippery slope because we'll start dating worse and worse and worse and worse and worse because we have this habit of not seeing clearly.
Yes.
To put it simply.
It's such a downward spiral.
Yeah.
So as I was thinking about this subject this week, I was thinking it's really good to start out with, well, what's the steps that happened before? Because we've talked about a couple of what we've done that get us to this bad breakup part. And so often I see people who are touting, and I get why they're touting, but it makes me cringe. I love immediately. I love hard. I wear my heart on my sleeve and I go, oh, yeah, I get why you believe that's a good thing. And I could see why it's a good thing. And there's no moderation, no filtering. So the visual I give people for that is I go, I mean, everybody, I'm sure, has seen some doctor show, and I really don't know if how real all these hearts are when they take a heart out of somebody's body, but it's this little precious thing. It's this, I mean, you could hold it in your hand, and you're bleeding that on your sleeve for just anybody, for the weather, for birds to poop on it. I mean, really, and I'll say it that way, that graphically, and they're like, oh. I go, because I like that you eventually love wholly. I love that you will open your heart eventually. There needs to be some filtering. There needs to be the blinds that you only open a little at a time. There needs to be a way that you're vetting people before you give them a chance to stomp on your precious heart. Yeah. And wow, that is either like, oh, forget it, or eye-opening when I say that to people.
Well, the thing is, part of the healing of past relationship hurts is also to learn what didn't work, so you can use that as part of your criteria to search better next time. So you do, in fact, don't go full out like, let me try it again, and then crash and burn. And then let me try it again, crash and burn. It's like, no.
No. So the other thing that I say frequently that women do, but boy, now that I'm coaching widowers, they do this too. We get emotionally involved, which often is exacerbated by having sex too early.
Oh, yeah.
Because then we get emotionally attached. As much as I do understand that both men and women, and men easier, can have non-emotional sex. They really can, easier than women can. You can have an orgasm and really sincerely say it was just sex.
Right.
More difficult for women. And I found that men who were still in love when their spouse died, that part of them is not as available. They're much more open to getting emotionally involved when they have sex with someone. So we all know I'm a big proponent for waiting some amount of time till you see if this, not only is this person going to be worthy of your heart, this precious thing,
Yes.
but your body.
Yeah.
You're letting them either inside or going inside somebody else's body. And wow, it has so many repercussions, positive and negative, that people don't think about ahead of time, because we've got this animal drive that God gave us. How nice, or there wouldn't be the rest of the population. It's a close, wonderful feeling to be held by somebody else and have naked skin next to each other. And who doesn't like a great orgasm? Oh my God. And there's so many other ways that you can take care of yourself ahead of time and tell a person that, wow, I really am into you and I really like you, and I need to just wait a little bit more till I know a little bit more about you, and be clear about what it is you need to know before you open your emotions. Because majority of the time, not always, this is what I hear has been one of the steps that made them go too fast, too soon.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there was so much to unpack from that.
No, I thought,
Well,
I
first
can
of
do
all,
a whole bunch at once.
indeed, yes. Well, first of all, I remember we did talk about when to have sex a few weeks ago on one of our
Yes.
talks. So definitely, if you have been watching our broadcast and you didn't know that one, you can go watch it on this channel and go look for the previous broadcast. It was 3 or 4 weeks ago. Second thing is the thing about how men can separate that out, sex and love, is because, and I don't know if I've said it here before too, but men's and women's brains are wired differently. Matter of fact, I mean, John Gray talks about this, and I remember referencing Mark Gungor, who's this minister back east who did this series for his congregation called The Tale of Two Brains. But one thing he said amongst his talk that really stuck out for me is the fact that, well, the way that men's and women's brains are wired. And women's brains, basically, it's like one contiguous wire connecting everything. Everything to everything else. So everything's situational. All things that go with it go with the story. So sex is bonded to love and intimacy and connection automatically because it's all part of the same picture. Men's brains are like little boxes all floating in space, separate from each other, all isolated.
Yeah.
So sex is in one box, love's in another box, and they don't touch.
Yeah.
So our connection to each other is going to be different. So because basically one of the skills of being a masculine man is compartmentalization, which can be a double-edged sword too. It can work for us and against us.
Yes.
But to get things done, it can be really effective. But when in a relationship, it can be challenging because we don't keep things connected as well. We tend to disassociate for convenience and also for the way we function. And let me put on top of that, I'm speaking generalities for men and women, of course. This is not like everybody. But understanding that difference in connection is why a lot of men, especially when they were sowing their wild oats, so to speak, can happily have sex with a woman, move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. That player mentality was because the wiring wasn't there to connect the two. So love and sex didn't actually fit together as an automatic process, where for women, oftentimes it did connect, unless they were in their masculine mind, because women can do that too, so that there would be a bonding that they would feel rendered by, or rendered, whatever that word is, because the guy left her. And have it torn away because it's like the building of love was then crushed because the sex was great, but the love wasn't reciprocated.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So if you get emotionally attached before you know if the other person's capable and willing and ready, the odds are stacked against you that you're going to end up with somebody who's feeling the same way you are. And you're going to care so much that's the thing about, you think about the pendulum, that I always tell people you need to start out as a 0, and the most you can be when you meet them in person is a 1, even though you want to be a 412. Because if you get to 30 really fast because they're really cute and wow, having sex with them was great, and it doesn't work out, instead of only having a 1 to move back to 0, you're falling from a 30.
Yeah.
And yes, there are times when shit happens, they didn't really, like some widower people, they think they're ready and then it turned out they weren't. And that's heartbreaking. And they really didn't know. The unknowing was really unknowing.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have even known it, even if you'd asked the question. They didn't know till they tried. Where some of these other questions that you're going to ask people, if you really listen, especially men, good men, they're going to tell you the truth. And when they tell you the truth and you go, but I don't really want to believe that. I really want it to be different. That's when you call Barry and I, because we're going to talk you off that ledge.
Indeed, indeed.
Because you are setting yourself up for a terrible fall with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the thing about men, and I'd love for you to speak about this, is generally, if the sex is great, you probably do want to see us again because that was fun. You want to do that again. But you're not our hero yet. You're not looking to protect and provide us. I mean, you are because you're a good guy, but you're not getting attached. You're not bonding with us. That does generally happen over time with men, that you care about us over time. You care about us because of we start sharing our life, what's happening in our life, and you're like, wow, I really like that about her, and I like how she thinks, and I like how she talks, and I like how I feel masculinely, not just orgasmic, but I like how I feel as a man around her. I like how she receives my gifting of opening doors for her, and she asks for my opinion and my help. And that's what bonds men to us and helps them start connecting with our hearts, how the hearts connect. And that really does take more than just a one night stand usually.
In fact, I would use the term invested.
Yes, I love that word.
Because that's what it comes down to, because it's not an instant on. And yes, we can be turned on instantly, but we won't be emotionally bonded instantly. That does take time. And the nuance of that is it's got to be cumulative versus like so overwhelming that it's like splat. I mean, if a woman like wants the man thinking that she can accelerate the process by telling him everything, he's going to turn tail and run.
Yes.
So it's almost like accrued and earned credits in a way. That investment model is like you're going to be invested with the person because you've built up a level of connection, of intimacy, of bonding.
Yes.
And yeah, the sex is almost like the dividends on top of the investment. I'm trying to find analogies.
I'm loving all of your analogies. These are fabulous.
But that's the way it works for women in a lot of ways. It's like, the sex isn't the only thing especially if you're over 30 for most men. Before that, it may not count as anything. Sex is all they want. And again, being general, so please don't get insulted. If you want to message us, feel free to comment. But the thing I want to say is that generally speaking, sex is an important piece to have.
Yes.
But for most men, they're looking for something more than that after a certain point, because it's going to sound silly, but it's like just climaxing isn't enough to sustain a relationship. Like, hello.
No, it's so true. And as much as you men have a drive and you like touching us and you like seeing us naked, and that's just part of your nature, that if we pace it as women, if you're a good guy and you're into us, you'll be respectful of that. Because you do have this desire to see if there's more substance. Right. And I was going to tack on with your great financial analysis here, because more so men are really looking for return on their investment of their time and their energy and their money. You really are. You really are. I mean, I tell women, if he's sitting there, he's decided that you are worth his time to be sitting there. You're still thinking about it, because that's what we women do. I mean, we really have to think about it and try it on and tell 14 of our friends and see what they think. I mean, it's just kind of part of our charm of differences between men and women, that you have made up your mind enough to invest your time, money, and energy there. And if you ask us out a second time, it's because you're willing to continue to invest your time, money, and energy. And part of what we need to do as women is to keep saying, like it, want you to keep coming, and would you tell me this too? And would you interact with me about this way? And I really need you to listen to this part to see, can we start feeling like we're getting a return on our investment? Because ours is much more centered in the emotional part, where you're up here in your intellect thinking about, is this worth my while? In the most lovely way. I know it sounds so crass, but I love that we're doing it, because it takes it out of this emotional feeling place that we women have.
Yes, right.
And I think it's helpful to go, oh, really? Is that what's going on? oh, that's really helpful when I'm feeling the throes of, to know it really is, the whole thing isn't this basic, but you can start out with this very basic explanation to go, start here, start thinking this way. You'll date much more successfully. You won't have that big crash, because it's like, well, I want to meet my spouse on the first date. That's a lot to ask.
Right.
And then they decide that that's really what happened, and without any foundation. And then they're going to really crash if the person doesn't call, because they're like, they abandoned me. I go, after one date?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And
this is all the ways that we side swipe ourselves to get to the place where we're crashing and burning and having these big hurts.
Right, but this is like a lot of the keys about how to date better, and how to, and especially the investment piece is going to talk about that. Yeah. But we need to get, we definitely, and I know we've got the break coming up, but it's definitely get to the piece about how do you heal, because right now we're talking about once you've healed, this is the better way to date in the future. But before we get there, we'll talk about the healing piece, which we'll do.
Oh, sure. Because I figured we needed to sort of set up how you get there. What the big, like if you're going down this road, where all the potholes are. And now that you've fallen in a pothole, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
So we'll talk about how to get out of potholes when we come back from the break.
Perfect.
And we're back talking about how to heal from bad breakups. So we've talked about the financial world and raising fish, and now we're to potholes.
We're doing a lot of interesting stuff now.
I know. I like, though, what seems to relax people a lot is when we get a chance to take it just a little bit out of that heart-wrenching modality, so that it doesn't feel quite as tender and raw.
Yeah.
Yep, you just fell in a pothole. That's what happened.
Right. Although the Band-Aid analogy was a little bit close to home.
For sure. And you keep piling it on and it's just going to keep festering.
Right.
So yeah, how do you recover? You know, because we talked about all the ways that you can get yourself in a fix of having a bad breakup. And we're not going to talk about if you're the person doing the breaking up, because it's just so much harder. It's much harder to be the person that got broken up with. It just
The brokey or
the
something.
brokey as opposed to the broke or.
Right. Something.
We'll just keep making up our own terms here.
Why not? Yeah.
So what I have found is one of the biggest pitfalls when you fall in that big pothole is your self-esteem will always take a blow. It just will. How could it not? I gave it my all. I thought they loved me. How could I have been so wrong? I thought I was better at picking. I thought I asked all the right questions. What's wrong with me? It must be me. I must be completely 100% totally screwed up.
On top of that, I believed in them. I trusted them. I gave them my love. I gave them my support. How could they deserve me? How could they do this to me?
Yes.
That stuff on top of it. So it's not so much just our own feeling of what we did wrong. It's about how could they do us wrong as well. So it's a double whammy.
A double whammy of what's bad about us, what's missing
Right.
about us, what's broken about us. And, you know, you and I are both big proponents about it's really important to take your responsibility and to see what their responsibility is too. And generally, I've seen most people take it on themselves. Some people just now it was all about them and they don't take any responsibility. But they don't call us, the people that don't think it was any their fault.
This whole show will be really relevant to them because they don't need to heal because they're fine.
They're fine. Everybody else is so screwed up. I don't understand. Why do I keep meeting these crazy people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Crazy people. I've heard that
more
times
more than once. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely more than once. So when you are taking all the responsibility or even the majority of the responsibility, let's really sort that out and say, what's the truth? How much of it really is you? How much of it isn't you? And how do you move forward and not just stay stuck face down in this pit?
Right. Well, so as a general, not a guideline, but a general experience, for many people, they get into a relationship not using 20/20 vision. In fact, they're doing 20/20 hindsight when they're broken up. So they're looking back and going, oh, now I know how bad it was or whatever that was. But for most of us, when we get into a relationship, because and again, as we said before the break, you want to get really clear and take your time to invest over time versus rushing in, is because you want to be able to take time to get to know this person so you can see clearly, are they the one you want to invest your lifetime with? Because they may be somebody looking when you start seeing clear, it's like, maybe not. And then you realize you might have avoided a really bad situation.
Yes.
So having clear sight and knowing what happened is great. But then when you go through a breakup and realize that you missed stuff, it's almost like, I thought I knew better. So there's a lot of, what can happen is a lot of self-recrimination can be added on top of it, which we don't need to do. However, we tend to use a lot of, we tend to weaponize our emotional baggage against ourselves.
Yeah, we do. What little self-confidence we had worked really hard to gain often just gets a pin in it and the balloon flies around the room and is all this big puddle on the floor.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I use as an umbrella statement is one of Maya Angelou's most famous statements is that we did best what we knew then. And now that we know better, we get to choose to do better.
Absolutely.
So I write passes to people all the time. Yep. Sucks that you didn't know that. Really sucks. And wow, how cool that you know that now. Because some people never learn that. And you seem to have learned it really fast. Because I've never had to teach anybody to give themselves a hard time. So what I always want to keep teaching people is how to balance it with, but this is the part you did good. And this is the part that you learned. And this is the part that you're going to ease into, not cut off from what you did before. Ease, because generally there was good things or you wouldn't have stayed.
Absolutely.
So credit yourself. This is really important, if I do say so myself.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. It's very important to look at what were the good traits they had. What did you call in that was really right for you? because we want to say, well, this was crappy, so they were a crappy person, or they did this crappy thing, so that was a crappy decision. Not usually 100%.
Right.
I mean, a diagnosable narcissist, psychopath, sociopath person, for sure. And you needing to learn how to recognize them. Generally, most people are just us fallible, lovely, normal human beings trying our best to get by in the world, to go, oh, yeah, they were nice to me. They were polite to me. They just decided they weren't ready to date.
Mm-hmm.
Or they treated me in a really courteous manner and they made time for me like I like. Crap, they went back to an old love. I mean, you still have to look at the good, because if you only look at the bad, like when I tell people, I was married for 13 years and I got divorced, I don't feel like it was a failure. It doesn't feel like a failure. I learned that I liked being married. I learned some of the traits I really liked about my first husband, and lots of traits that weren't good for me. He was a perfectly lovely person, just not good for me. And what I needed to work on, that I would be a better partner and I would choose a better partner next time. Took me a while to get there, and then I did that. So that was really helpful, because I had a little bit of a little dip with that of, well, gosh, does that mean I failed? No, not at all. For somebody who was 18 years old, I did pick some really good traits, which was pretty amazing. And had no idea how to not pick the traits that were bad for me. So if you keep looking each time and you keep your emotions in check, so it's not this huge crash down most of the time, then you feel like you've taken 5 steps forward and maybe 2 steps back.
Right.
Instead of 10 steps back.
Well, the thing is, because what you said there about 13, it's like the reality was it was a 13-year marriage and then a divorce. It wasn't a marriage with a 13-year divorce.
No, that's
what people
way to look at it. Yeah,
because people do that. They put all the weight on the end, but back end it failed. It's like you went all the way. It's like you drive a car and then after 200,000 miles the engine blows up and you hate the car. It's like that was 200,000 miles. You had the car and then something bad happened. Yeah. So yes, you want to make sure you include all the good as well, to be aware of what good things happen in the past relationship. However, because it was good, that's less to focus on. During the process of healing, what you're healing, thankfully, is the small part that didn't work, is what caused the breakup. Because again, a lot of people look at this and get overwhelmed and they paint everything with the feeling of the breakup.
Yes.
And so then it's like looking at everything that's like overwhelming, they can't deal with it, and then we'll shut down and lock themselves away and not deal with anything, which is not an effective result.
Not at all.
So when you can, with your emotions in turmoil and upset and distress and woundedness from the bad breakup, step back enough to see the goodness of the relationship with this piece that you want to work on, it gives it perspective. And that perspective allows you to have leverage, and they sound like fancy tools, but the reality is that when you can see that what you're dealing with is manageable and it won't overtake you, won't overwhelm you, then you're willing to face it and you can heal it. Because most people don't want to deal with it because they're worried it's going to overwhelm them.
Yes.
So it's important to face it that way.
Yes. So there's another way of pacing yourself during the healing. So
Indeed.
In the beginning, we paced ourselves and getting into the relationship. Now you pace yourself in the healing. So when you've had a bad breakup, you need to cry and scream and yell and tell your friends and call that person terrible names. And one of the exercises I give them I said, you write a letter and tell them how awful it was and how hurt you are and call them names. There's no censoring allowed. And then you decide what to do with that letter, because mailing it is not an option. But I've keep it, and personally, I've gotten creative with mine. I've ripped it up in little pieces and flushed it down the toilet. I've burned it with sage. I've wrapped it around rocks and thrown it in the ocean. Seems pretty okay, biodegradable. It's paper. But get it out. Feel the pain.
Right.
Weep on the couch. Watch a movie is going to make you cry. And then watch a movie that will make you laugh. Because none of what we're saying is to ignore any of this. I really felt like I needed to say that out loud. Please feel the feelings.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. The letter writing exercise is a piece I love having my clients do. I use it in several different aspects too, but particularly in their relationship, when you really are feeling trapped because you've gone through this breakup and you didn't voice to that person the things you didn't like or that you're upset about. Yeah. Getting it out of your system is part of the healing, because otherwise it's stuck inside like stakes that are stuck into you. It's like, no. Yeah. really get it out there. My personal preference always was burning it, because burning is about letting it go to spirit. It's about dissolving it, removing it, so it doesn't exist anywhere after that.
Yeah.
So don't do it on your computer, because you don't burn the computer. you don't, and also, and if you want to get really creative with this, what I've also done with my clients, because some I learned from my background in psychology, is if you really want to go deeper and deeper and access the emotions, use your non-dominant hand.
Yeah.
Because your non-dominant hand bypasses the brain. It goes straight into the emotional as part of the content, so you can write things out. And the good thing about it is when you're writing stuff out, it doesn't have to make sense.
No.
It doesn't even have to be legible, because most people's non-dominant hands aren't legible, which is fine.
Yeah.
But the thing about doing it is it's almost like you can feel the emotions moving through.
Yeah.
And because it's illegible, better yet, you don't want to read it again.
No.
You want to get it out, vent it out completely, and then when you finish, and you can tell because the energy shifts completely, your feelings will lighten up, let go, whatever it is. Maybe you'll move to tears. But the anger and the rage and the upset will dissipate after a certain period of time. And it might be 50 minutes, it might be 5 hours. You don't know. You're going to just go with it.
Yeah.
Then you take all the paper, bundle it up, and ideally burn it in the fireplace or in a bucket outside somewhere where you can do it safely. But that way you're releasing all of that toxicity out of your system, which is a great way to do it.
And you watch it go literally up in smoke.
Yes. There's certain satisfaction to that.
And then some people, when I've worked with them, and I've done it a couple of times myself, where I didn't feel like I wanted that closure. You know, we want that closure. How do you get closure? And you can't get closure. So what I've done is, after I've done the "you're such a shit" letter, I've written what I want them to say to me.
Yeah.
I wrote it all out. God, you know, I really was stupid, and yeah, I really should have told you ahead of time, or wow, yeah, I really did act jerky, or whatever it was that I need them to. If I was going to want my closure and I could just be the movie director and I write the script, I write it all out.
Right.
And then I burn that one too. And I have to tell you, it can sometimes just be that extra little, like cleaning out the aquarium, that gets rid of just that last little bit of silt, that last little bit of, yeah, I feel better now. I can move on.
So from my flavor of doing this, because I do a lot with forgiveness, of course, and we'll talk about that as well.
Oh yeah.
But for me, and I'm gonna explain what I'm talking about, what you just said. So I'm gonna go here first and come back to it. So forgiveness is something that for me is not something you can just do with your mind. It requires an emotional investment. So for me, forgiveness has to be tied to compassion, because forgiveness is a self-focused process. You're not forgiving anybody else, because this is the key, and I'll explain that later on what that means. But you got to forgive yourself, which means that to do it, you need to be in your heart to do it, and compassion's the way to get there. So to precede that, I do it differently. From instead of the writing out the positive stuff or writing what you want to say, is I have my client either do it, if we're doing it over the phone, we're doing it together, I'll have them do like basically two positions, two chairs facing each other, where they sit in the chairs themselves and they put their ex in the other chair. And they can do as they wish in terms of communication to that person, either whether it is still vent if they're still stuck into that, or the things they wish they'd said, or and then they can sit in the other chair as their ex and say the things they wish they'd heard from their partner. Because that process will definitely move the energy from anger into basically emotional release, into compassion, into tears, into sadness, yes. But from that place, it moves you more easily into doing the forgiveness work. So it's actually a leverage piece, but I do it that way because for me, it's really about moving the energy of the body as well, but also to externalize and separate from that person's energy. So it works well. So do that. That's actually from Gestalt, which I learned from my graduate program.
Yeah. Oh, the 2 chairs is such a valuable tool.
Yeah.
And as you said, not only do you get a chance to hear from the other person, you get to express your feelings about what was really hard for you and the part that was your responsibility, because it's important for us to accept our part in it, because when we accept it, we're like, well, now I could choose to do something differently. I really can choose now that I go, oh, yeah, I see why I did that. I see what old messages I had from my family or my old relationships. I can see why I did it again this time. And now that it's so clear, I can now make a choice of how to do this differently. And when you're saying it out loud, because that is so powerful, especially when you have a witness. I mean, people just are like, it feels so much more real when you're listening to me. And I go, yeah. I mean, and it's why they do like testimonials, and you're a witness for people when they do that in a church, in a religious atmosphere, that I feel like that's what I do for my clients. I am a witness for them.
Absolutely. And the great thing is, and that's the greatest thing is, one, because it means they don't have to worry about how to facilitate themselves.
Yes.
I'll do the work for them to manage it. All they need to do is be in the process.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's my joy to hold that enclosure, that safe space for them, so they can be safe to do that.
Oh,
So it's such a gift to do that work.
it's what we love about our work.
One of the things.
One of the many things. We're so lucky. Yeah, holding space for people to grow, because we go back to the Band-Aid analogy. You can't heal and grow if you just keep piling it on and, oh, there's no hurt there. Well, yeah, there really is.
Right.
That it expands. They feel lighter. I'm sure you hear that too. And I feel more free. I feel more free to be me. I feel happier with who I am, because all of that was feeling very oppressive to them.
And it was trapped inside. It wasn't being put out. So being able to free it up and release it is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then on that piece about forgiveness for a second, because part of the challenge we deal with when we go through breakups, this is true in other areas of life where we get upset, is we usually carry some sort of baggage. And I have these four. I've been joking calling them the 4 horses of the apocalypse. I've jokingly called them, which is guilt and shame, resentment and blame.
Yeah. Because
all of them are tied to one thing, which is judgment.
Yes.
And blame and resentment are towards other people. Guilt and shame are turned inward. But they're actually the flip side. They're actually the same things on the two sides of the same coin, basically. And I'll explain how they work mechanically. But bottom line is, all 4 of those things are things we can have to varying degrees about our ex-partner, about ourselves, and about relationships. So at the other person, at ourselves. They're all tied to the one thing, which is judgment, because we're putting a label on about something that wasn't right or was wrong or was whatever it was that didn't fit. And the only way to release that is through forgiveness. Yes. And forgiveness, as I said, is a self-focused practice. It isn't about forgiving somebody else, because who they are is not what you're forgiving. You're forgiving the behavior we let happen. So we're forgiving the judgments we placed against what they did.
Yes.
So when you forgive yourself, and I've got actually created from my master's program, we learned about forgiveness, and I wrote a workbook based upon that, which means it goes into much greater detail. So people can reach me, and we'll talk about connection at the end, and I'll send it to you as a gift from me to you. But recognizing that forgiveness is available to you, it's a practical skill that is worthwhile practicing, so you can be free and lighter and happier to be available in another relationship.
Yes.
It's almost like a mandate. When you go through a breakup, you want to do a checklist. Have I done my forgiveness work? Yes. Because when you do, it's a way through. It's part of the process of healing. So don't bypass it.
Yes. Boy, because we want to skip that stage. We really want to skip that. Yeah, one of the terms I've been using a lot lately that so goes along with your 4 horsemen is, what part is bleeding over? Let's look at the bleeding over you're having from a past hurt, a past relationship. Certainly, we can look at what the other person's is too, and what's ours. And how do we clean that up? How do we sort it together and then process it and let it go, so it'll stop bleeding all over everything?
Right. And so that's the thing, is having that recognition that it's, well, first of all, having recognition it's available. Second, it's having recognition it's within our grasp. We can do this. Yes. And so to bottom line this piece is that you and I, with our clients, we're the space holder, but we will facilitate the clients through the process so they heal more quickly and more completely, so they are free to have a healthy relationship going forward. So that's why we're here. And
so much reassurance from us to them. You can get through this and be fine on the other end, better on the other end, more whole. That's the thing. You can be even more, you feel like you're going to be more broken, and you really can be more whole.
Yeah, we got you.
Isn't that a nice, hopeful thing to leave them on that note?
Absolutely.
So in order to get from there to here,
or here to there, that way, whichever it is.
From feeling like crap to feeling better, you could talk to Barry or I, and we'd be happy to help you with that.
Absolutely.
So the way to get a hold of me is through my website, www.theperfectcatch.com. And there's a place where you can click on that said, what's holding you back from love? And when you click on it, you can have a complimentary conversation with me, and we'll just dig in and figure out how to get you feeling better about your existent or non-existent love life. You can also send me an email at Christine@theperfectcatch.com. You can reach me on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube and
Instagram
Instagram. Thank you, Barry.
Gotta be there.
Yes. And Barry, please tell people how they can reach you.
Certainly. So my website is my name, which is easy to find. So barryselby.com. On there is a bunch of different things. You can definitely click on the first button, which is to have a conversation with me, so we can see where you are and where you want to get to, if I can help you get there. There's also my book and courses and other things on my website as well. If that forgiveness practice I mentioned is of interest to you, you can drop me an email to barry@barryselby.com. I'll just send it back as a PDF, so your inbox will receive it happily. And then on social media, I am on, let me qualify this. You can find me as Barry Selby on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Pinterest, on Clubhouse, and YouTube. And then on Facebook, it's Barry Selby, the author, and on Instagram, it's the real Barry Selby. I think that's everything. Yes.
I think so too. You did good.
That's some practice.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope that you get some valuable information out of this and that you'll reach out to us if you have any other questions or concerns. And we will be back again next week at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between.
And actually, just a quick postscript, so to speak.
Yes.
If this did touch you, if you did have any questions or you had any thoughts, if this has given you a chance to think about how good life can be, leave a comment below. Reach out to us, get some support. We're not here just to be talking heads.
No.
We're here to support you.
We live to interact. Can you tell
we do. Indeed.
We like interacting.
Yes. So
it's our favorite thing.
So yes, as Christy was saying, we will see you again next week for another episode.
Yes.
At 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. So bye till next week.